Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be here for Obicon 2021 amidst the pandemic of Corona. And I sincerely thank Shashank for giving me this opportunity to talk on this wonderful subject. Now, we all know that obesity is associated with so many metabolic abnormalities like insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, hypogonadism, variety of cancers, and so many other things like sleep apnea, stress incontinence. But we don't know what is the common pathway by which obesity predisposes us to particular these conditions. Now, obesity is an emerging threat to our population. There is no doubt about it. Overweight and obesity are characterized by dysfunction or excessive accumulation of fat that may damage health. According to the latest data of WHO, between 75 to 16, that is 40 years span, the obesity prevalence of obesity has almost tripled, and at least 2.8 million people have died each year because of either obesity or overweightedness. And this problem is no longer confined to only high income, high socio-economic group of people, but it is affecting low middle income countries as well. So obesity, as we just saw, triggers many diseases such as type 2 diabetes, hypertension, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, hypogonadism, obstructive sleep apnea, asthma, stress urinary incontinence. Usually, this is supposed to go through a pathophysiological changes or abnormalities or biochemical abnormalities before the manifestation of these diseases. And these comprise glucose uptake changes, that is, compromise in glucose uptake, insulin and leptin resistance, low grade inflammation, modified sympathetic activity accompanied by reduced noradrenergic innervation, and thermogenesis, changes in the gut microbiota. But today I will concentrate on low grade inflammation and how it is responsible for all the other energy balance disorders. Now, this is a very good review article which I will suggest to all of you to go through: macrophages, inflammation, and insulin resistance, which appeared in annual reviews of physiology in 2010. Now, what is proposed in this as the final common pathway, that as the weight of a person starts increasing because of adiposity, the fat cells go on increasing in number, and ultimately they are going to become more and more hypertrophied, because at a certain point the cell division is overcome and the cell size increment is beginning, so that the adipocytes become more and more large. And this is especially so in the visceral area and epicardial area. So these two sides of obesity are especially dangerous for the inflammation provoking obesity, you can say. Now what you see here is the all are these adipocytes and how they are going on increasing in size as well as number. And when the size increases certain amount, then it overruns its blood supply and there occurs a relative hypoxia, which causes death of many adipocytes. The dying adipocytes start releasing certain inflammatory markers, and these markers and adipokines and cytokines attract macrophages to invade the adipocyte structure. Here, the macrophages are seen to be surrounding the dying or dead adipocytes, and this particular structure, that is a dead adipocyte surrounded by a crown-like crowding of the macrophages, is called as crown-like structure or CLS, and used to quantify the adipocyte death from the biopsies of subcutaneous and visceral adipose tissue. So what happens? This is called as white adipose tissue or VAT. Now, an adipose tissue, when it starts becoming hyperplastic and hypertrophic, it outgrows its blood supply, leading to hypoxia, adipocyte stress, and apoptosis. This is paralleled by increased production of MCP1 and several other cytokines that are traditionally involved in wound healing. In addition to recruitment, MCP1 may also stimulate proliferation of macrophages within adipose tissue. Macrophages from the form the envelope around a dead or dying adipocyte in a configuration termed as crown-like structure or histologic biomarker of inflammation. And macrophages that form the CLS engage in phagocytosis of dead or dying adipocyte. They themselves become lipid-laden and are called as foam cells. The dead adipocytes detected as crown-like structure are prevalent in visceral fat depots. So more than 90% of the macrophages infiltrating the adipose tissue of obese humans and animals are found dead adipocytes, forming characteristic elements that are typically forming the crown-like structure. And therefore, quantification of this CLS yields a fairly accurate number of macrophages infiltrating the fat depots. The visceral depots are prevalent sites of adipocyte death and macrophage infiltration. And due to greater susceptibility to death of the adipocytes found at this particular anatomical site compared to those found in the subcutaneous depot. Now, this is what is the uh, diagrammatic representation of what I told you just now. This is a lean person's adipocyte. They secrete the healthy adipokine called as adiponectin. While as the obesity increases, the adipocyte becomes larger in size, becomes hypoxic, starts dying, is infiltrated by the macrophages, and then it releases many pro-inflammatory cytokines like IL-6, TNF alpha, leptin, resistance. On the other hand, the adiponectin production goes down. The positive linear correlation found between adipocyte size and the CLS in these depots suggests that increased adipocyte size is a factor triggering macrophage infiltration. This suggests that visceral adipocytes reach a critical size, triggering death before the subcutaneous adipocytes can do it. And the established concept, therefore, is that the larger the adipocyte, it correlates with the greater insulin resistance. At the same time, free fatty acids are released from the entrapped adipocytes and they bind to the toll-like receptors which are present on the macrophage cell membranes. Now, leading to increased nuclear factor kappa beta dependent expression of pro-inflammatory genes. Lipolysis and release of free fatty acids are further stimulated by TNF alpha. So, in short, it is the dying adipocyte surrounded by the macrophages releasing many pro-inflammatory adipokines. Here again, you can see that when there is calorie excess, if the calorie excess causes increase in the cell number, adipocyte number, then usually the adipocytes are of small size. They maintain adipogenesis. Their volume is low. Insulin sensitivity is good, and there is low inflammation. But if the adipocytes don't proliferate but go on only increasing in the size, then they become unhealthy adipocyte or unhealthy expansion with decreased adipogenicity. This is increased cell hypertrophy, decreased insulin sensitivity, and low-grade inflammation with macrophage infiltration. And this is related to ectopic lipid deposition, which is one of the main, you can say, pathophysiological factor in development of non-alcoholic fatty liver, development of insulin resistance through deposition of triglycerides in the myocytes, then type 2 diabetes and coronary vascular death. This is the same in pictorial fashion. As the adipocytes increase in the size, they outgrow their blood supply and therefore they become hypoxic. And so they invite the macrophages, and macrophages invade and start destroying the dying adipocytes. So it is the dying adipocytes where the macrophages, which are normally in M2 mode, are converted into M1. Now, M1 is the killer macrophage and M2 is the healer macrophage. So when the wound is healing or when there is no much inflammation, the M2 macrophages predominate and they do not produce much pro-inflammatory cytokines. They produce anti-inflammatory cytokines. But when obesity supervenes, the adipocytes, macrophages are converted into M1 macrophages, which are going to kill the adipocytes and release the. Okay. Now we will discuss something about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Is it seen properly? Yes. Now, as obesity progresses, it results in high prevalence and severity of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and even promotes or liver-specific mortality is more in these patients. Now, what actually happens is, starting with the accumulation of triglyceride in the lipid droplets of hepatocyte, which is a causative factor in development of steatosis. The steatosis progresses to steatohepatitis or NASH, and this induces cirrhosis, elevates the risk of developing hepatocellular fibrosis, and ultimately malignancies like hepatocellular carcinoma. Now you can see obesity associated with dying adipocytes with release of pro-inflammatory cytokines associated with insulin resistance, increase in the free fatty acid levels, adipokine dysregulation, that means decrease in the adiponectin and increase in the leptin, and inflammatory responses affects the liver in such a way that steatosis followed by cell stress, then inflammation, fibrosis, cirrhosis, and then predisposition to primary hepatocellular carcinomas. Obesity changes the composition of immune cells in adipose tissue. This in turn triggers inflammation of adipose tissue and death of adipocytes. And inflammation of adipocyte tissue, release of free fatty acids, and infiltration by M1 macrophages all lead to insulin resistance and further progression of fatty liver. So just concentrate on this and you will find that it is the pro-inflammatory cytokines which are responsible for this. We also know that apart from insulin resistance and fatty liver, there is increased predilection to certain cancers in obesity. Now, what happens is the tumor promoting effects of obesity occur at local level via adipocyte inflammation and associated alteration in microenvironment, as well as systemically via circulating metabolic and inflammatory mediators. Now, we need more precise measurements of obesity. We need more precise, you can say, biomarkers to indicate adipose inflammation. At present, we are using C-reactive protein and IL-6. Moreover, adipose inflammation is a reversible process and therefore represents a novel therapeutic target. Now, cancer and microenvironment. Now you can imagine that tumor cells are surrounded by a small environmental milieu, which is something like a wound and its milieu. The importance of tumor microenvironment in the development, growth, and progression of cancer is well recognized. Chronic inflammation is a classic and prevalent example of ongoing perturbation within microenvironment. Moreover, epidemiologic data have established association between chronic inflammation and development and progression of several cancers, including gastric, esophageal, colorectal, hepatic, pancreatic, bladder, and lung. So the tumor microenvironment closely resembles that of a wound, and the chronic tissue injury, such as adipose tissue inflammation, can stimulate the same wound healing mechanism and generate a pro-neoplastic environment. Now, the cytokines generated in the inflamed vat, such as IL-6, they activate androgen receptors and therefore promote cancer cells, especially prostate cancer cell survival and proliferation. So this is very important that apart from and pro-inflammatory cytokines, there is also stimulation of androgen receptors by these adipokines. Similarly, there is an enzyme called as aromatase, which is stimulated, which converts the androgen to estrogen and therefore makes them prone to more estrogen-dependent malignancies. So several pro-inflammatory mediators associated with VAT, including TNF-alpha, COX-2 derived prostaglandin E2, can induce aromatase, a rate-limiting enzyme for estrogen biosynthesis. And leptin also is known to be an inducer of aromatase. So in short, pro-inflammatory adipokines and their effects on even the hormonal, you can say, axis promotes tumorigenesis. Now, what happens is when individuals who are obese have elevated free fatty acids, that induces a endoplasmic reticulum stress, because you see, endoplasmic reticulum is a key organelle involved in protein folding. And when the free fatty acid mediated reactive oxygen species oxidize these proteins, then they cannot be folded properly. So there is unfolded protein load on the endoplasmic reticulum, and therefore there is endoplasmic reticulum stress because of this. And the major transducers of the unfolded protein response are mainly RNA-like endoplasmic reticulum kinase, which activates transcription factor, and these are responsible for many metabolic gene activation. So insulin resistance gene is activated by endoplasmic reticulum stress. So this VAT or white adipose tissue inflammation is ubiquitous in the sense that it is not only in a tissue in which you are looking for abnormality like breast tissue. When there is breast tissue biopsy showing crown-like structure indicating beginning of the VAT or inflammation, it also indicates that such inflammation foci are also present in visceral adipocytes, in epicardial adipocytes. So it is a indicative of a diffuse phenomena. It's a sentinel for inflammation in other regional as well as distant adipocyte depots. Now, in addition to systemic inflammation, VAT inflammation is associated with metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome, as you all know, comprises a number of clinical disorders such as obesity, especially visceral obesity, insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, mainly hypertriglyceridemia, and decrease in HDL, and increase in the small, dense LDL oxidized molecules, and is associated with worse outcomes in patients with breast cancer. So breast VAT inflammation may constitute a local mechanism contributing to association between metabolic syndrome systemically and adverse breast tissue outcomes. The MESA study, a multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis, included 6 different ethnic populations. Total about 4,000 odd people were investigated. They were of Caucasian, African, Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean background. And they showed that the graded association between obesity, metabolic syndrome, NAFLD, and inflammation with calcium scoring. So in short, adipocyte is not an inert storage cell anymore. It has good adipokines as well as bad adipokines. A healthy adipocyte produces many good adipokines which maintain insulin sensitivity, keep lipids in adequate quantity, suppress angiogenesis, help body to maintain ideal body weight. But when increased adipocyte size follows excessive caloric intake, it is associated with hypoxia and cell death. And the cell death, which is followed by infiltration by the M1 macrophages, stimulates a variety of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are responsible for metabolic effects of this particular inflammation as well as tumorogenic effects. You can see that there are many inflammatory cytokines which prevent insulin from its binding to the insulin receptor, causing insulin resistance and therefore predisposing to metabolic syndrome as well as diabetes. So the lean adipose tissue, when it becomes obese, starts getting out of its blood supply, starts dying, gets macrophage infiltration. Then there is liberation of many adipokines and many cytokines which are pro-inflammatory, and there is decrease in good adipokine, that is adiponectin, and this is associated with increased glycogenolysis, increased gluconeogenesis, plasma glucose is increased, resulting in metabolic syndrome as well as diabetes. And in the muscles, because of accumulation of intramyocytic triglycerides, also there is resistance to action of insulin, causing decreased glucose uptake. So all these ultimately result in insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, and through so many pathways like endothelial dysfunction, endothelial activation, plaque formation, plaque rupture. Not only diabetes, metabolic syndrome, but coronary vascular disease is aggravated. Apart from this, there is increased incidence of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction in obese people. So although these patients exhibit an expansion of plasma volume that is proportional to their body mass, their primary pathophysiological abnormality appears to be a decrease in ventricular distensibility. The capacity of the left ventricle to dilate, it is in response to increase in the blood volume, is impaired, and thus even modest degrees of volume overload can lead to cardiac overfilling and disproportionate increase in the cardiac filling pressure. Similarly, the epicardial fat is also susceptible to increase in the adipocyte infiltration by macrophages, and where systemic inflammation as well as focal or local inflammation is seen with release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. And therefore, it is noteworthy that in chronic inflammatory states, the accumulation of epicardial adipose tissue is closely associated with presence, severity, and progression of the coronary artery disease, especially in visceral obesity. The accumulation of epicardial fat closely associated with impaired myocardial microcirculation. Because here it is very important to understand the pericardium, then epicardial fat, and myocardium. There is no barrier between myocardial cells and the epicardial or endothelial cells and the epicardial adipocytes. So they share similar nutrients, similar cytokines, and therefore patients with obesity-related high heart failure with preserved ejection fraction have increased epicardial fat thickness, and they exhibit a shift towards synthesis of pro-inflammatory cytokines. You all know that COVID-19 infection is also more common in obese people. Obese people are 113% more likely to get hospitalized if they become affected, 74% more likely to be in the ICU, and 48% more mortality is reported in obese. This is now well known. The cytokine storm also is likely to be more severe, recovery slow, late COVID syndrome is more open, and all this is related to underlying inflammation. So coming to the end of my lecture, what is the take-home message I would like to give? That with increasing visceral adiposity, there is progressive and graded increase in the local, focal, and systemic inflammation. It is mediated via adipocyte death due to hypoxia, activation of M1 macrophages, release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. It can be measured by CRP and IL-6 levels. This is correlated with insulin and leptin resistance, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and predisposition to many cancers. But the process is reversible and it lends itself to pharmacological modulations. So this is going to be a hot topic in future. So we can prevent many metabolic and cancerous complications of obesity. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shashank, and thank you everybody for listening to this. Thank you.